Are Prince Harry and Meghan Markle in an absolute panic over the disastrous reaction to Prince Harry's memoir, Spare? And I think they're collapsing media empire. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Royal News Network. My name is Brittany. And today we are talking about this just now released. And today we are talking about this new report from Variety. So this is one of the trade publications within the entertainment industry. And it's basically a puff piece, a press announcement wrapped up in an article where they're basically saying, oh, yes, we're hiring new people. We're hiring somebody for scripted content. We're hiring someone to oversee all our podcasts. With zero confirmation, there will be a season 2 of Archetypes. In the shadow of Spotify letting go 600 staff members, including the woman who signed their contract. That ain't looking good. And I think Hollywood sees them as a joke. We saw this on Jimmy Kimmel. They laughed at him. They mocked him. They mocked his book. And I feel like all of Hollywood is feeling this anymore. They're not amused. They're like, you know, if we associate with you, you're toxic. Your brand is so toxic at this point. I don't think even anyone wants to associate with them. And so Harry and Meghan, I feel like this release of the press announcement was an absolute sign of their internal panic. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. And so we're just going to release it and we're saying, we're fine. Everything's good. We're doing all this great stuff when they only have one thing coming out this summer. Now, granted, I could be totally wrong. They could have a million things in the works. I don't know. But if you release something like that, you should have a little bit more substance to it than we're shuffling people around and we have something coming out this summer. And that's it. We may have a season 2 of our podcast, but no confirmation. Archetypes was completed months ago. I don't think they have a confirmation yet. I think they're beginning to panic. And I think they want to show Hollywood that, hey, yes, we do have our house in order. We can do things. But you actually have to produce something. And beyond their own self-indulgence, I think Hollywood's saying, well, you need to create more than just things that drive your own ego. And so we're going to discuss a little bit about this today. And I'm going to read bits of the article to you. And we're going to react because I find it fascinating. So if you guys haven't been here to Royal News Network before, like I said, my name is Brittany, and on this channel I provide compelling royal commentary about the latest news and a little bit of gossip too. I have been a royal watcher for over 10 years, so I believe I have a bit of an expertise in this topic. I'm also a historian, so hopefully we'll be able to cover some history here pretty soon. I'll also be reviewing television shows and movies as well. And if you guys want an update about the latest royal news, what's going on, and some compelling royal commentary in written form, I have Royal Wire, so I'll link that down below. I also have a fashion channel, although I think I'm going to revamp that a bit. But again, the link will be down below. In addition to, I have a trip coming up to the UK. So if you want to go to the UK with me, spend some time at the Tower of London, hanging out, Westminster Abbey, St. Paul's, going to the Cotswolds, we will be doing all that. And I would love to have you come along. And again, everything is in the description box below. And just to start off with a bit, and so if you are not familiar with the other royals, yes, there are more than the Brits. And today, Princess Katharina Amalia, the Princess of Orange, so she is the heir apparent to the Dutch throne. She just landed as part of her first Caribbean tour. So this is actually somewhat of a tradition. So her father, who is now king, and her grandmother, who was queen, all have done this tour as really their first coming out as royals on more the international stage as they begin to take on some more royal duties. She's currently in college and university. And so this is an opportunity for her to tour the Dutch Caribbean islands. And so I'm super excited for this trip for her. I think that's wonderful. I love that we have some upcoming royals who are just turning of age, who are heirs and heirs apparent, and they can come in and just really see them grow up and grow into their roles. I think that's just such a fun time. We really haven't had this in quite a while. So I think this is a really great opportunity. And just so you know as well, the future is definitely female within the royal fold. We have definitely female heirs apparent in Sweden, Norway, the Netherlands, Spain, Belgium, just so many. And I just think it's absolutely fantastic. But back to Harry and Meghan. Yes, Archewell. They had this, I just came across it on Twitter and I was like, okay, so you have this announcement. The article title is, okay, and surprisingly, guys, it's very much buried. It's not even on the front page that I can tell. I saw it on Twitter. Let's find the search function. So this one is an exclusive because you got to remember Variety interviewed Meghan earlier in the fall, right before it came out after the Queen's death. And this was another attempt again to promote Archetypes, which did middling, let's be honest. And it says Meghan and Harry, not Harry and Meghan, Meghan and Harry bolster Archewell with new hires, promotions. And so, yes, they're shuffling things around. They're trying to get their house in order because they look like chaos and they looked inept and they look like a joke. So this is their attempt to try to mitigate some of that internal damage that I think is going on in Hollywood. So this is how it begins. Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, because heaven forbid nobody calls them the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. And I want to be clear as well, I have worked peripherally with a lot of PR people, and I will say this was obviously something from their PR team directly. It's basically a paid for post. This is what this is. This is a fluff puff piece to try to bolster this brand. But again, I could not find it on the front page. And I'm just on my phone, so maybe it's on the front page of the website, but I find it interesting it's not there. Have made key new hires and promotions at their umbrella company, Archewell. Entering its third year, the audio philanthropic and content production operation continues to grow. In audio, Serena Reagan has been named head of podcasts. Hired at the end of 2022, Reagan will now lead all development in that portfolio. Archetypes, the Vertical's debut project, was released last year and marked Archewell's first hit, an interview series about harmful labels that hold women back. The Meghan hosted series tops Spotify charts in 47 countries. A second season has not formally been announced, but has been well expected. They don't have it yet. That's what that tells you right there. They don't have it. They absolutely do not have any sort of confirmation they'll have a season 2. That's pretty shocking. And I feel like it's almost a way to publicly pressure Spotify to make a decision on this. Because here is where I think Spotify is. So they've let go of 600 staff members. They decreased their, I think, whole operation by about 6%. They let go of the woman who signed Harry and Meghan because she was the one who pushed podcasts. And Spotify is finding out that's a drain. That's a money drain that they don't need. It's not gaining them anything. It's not gaining them new subscribers. So Spotify is thinking, what do we do with Harry and Meghan? They delivered one single podcast together, which was dull, which they pretty much let other people lead because they had their famous celebrity friends record thoughts and stuff while they were during the pandemic. That's what they released. It was beaten by whale noises. Then we had Archetypes. And Archetypes was put on the top of the podcast, but we all know it didn't beat Joe Rogan. Why? Because the head of Spotify content who signed Harry and Meghan said nothing was ever beating Joe Rogan. In addition to that, all Joe Rogan's podcasts usually occupy the first 3 spots in the top of the charts in terms of episodes. Meghan's never even, I don't think, got into the top 5. So was her podcast really number 1? No, it was artificially shoved up there because they generate it based on the number of talking people do or how many people actually go. But when it comes to actually viewing, if it was the number 1 podcast, it should also be number 1 in the episode charts. That's how that should work, you would imagine. So we all know Archetypes wasn't that. It's also dropped down to infinity. It's like 125 the last time I looked. And I did a video on that not too long ago, so I just won't look it up and see where it is right now. So Harry and Meghan, it's cratered. And Archetypes wasn't that interesting. And again, I feel like a lot of Hollywood is recognizing that Harry and Meghan generate a lot of noise, not a lot of actual general interest. Are they converting these people into subscribers? If the answer is no, because you could listen to it for free. So if none of those people are subscribing, Spotify has nothing. It was basically throwing $25 million down the drain. So the question is, do they put all podcasts behind paywalls in order to get more people to subscribe and see if they are interested in subscribing to Meghan Markle's podcast? Or there's a couple of different options, but honestly, that they haven't, I think, says a lot because I think they're trying to evaluate where the company is going. And they've decided that podcast was mostly a drain. They still have Joe Rogan, and I don't think they're going to do anything with Joe because Joe is still the number 1 podcaster in the world. So they're not going to do anything about that. But I think they're evaluating, are people still listening to Meghan's podcast? Is it still getting good feedback? Is it still generating anything? Are any people, even beyond the initial dates, still listening and subscribing to Spotify based on that podcast? And they do have internal metrics that I'm sure can probably show them that. If not, I don't think there's a future for Archetypes. It was dull. It was boring. It was uninteresting. It was a vanity project. I think Meghan is a terrible interviewer. She was awful in that. And so I just don't see the benefit to Spotify to sign them. And they don't tell us they have anything in the works in terms of this is what we're going to do, because I don't think they have the creative talent to back it up. I've said this numerous times. I know it probably gets boring, but I think, again, this is another sign that they have to hire somebody to help them manage it. Now, granted, I'm looking at some point trying to expand, getting some help and stuff, but that's because I have all the creative juices. Just need somebody to help me manage it. That is more what I need, not somebody to help me create content. I think that's what they lean on, are people to create content for them because they can't do it. Again, you're talking about Harry, a guy who could not pass art without assistance, allegedly. Art is subjective. You should not need help. So again, I feel like this is an attempt to try to reach out to Spotify to publicly show, hey, we've changed positions, we've hired somebody new, we're looking to the future. We're gonna have all these different podcasts. And Spotify's like, well, that's great. Because again, Meghan to me has always been somebody who's just a lot of hot noise. She just talks and talks and talks, but action and actually being able to bring a product to the finish line is her Achilles heel in a lot of ways. And I feel like this shows it, because what am I supposed to latch onto here from a business perspective? What am I supposed to latch on to here? This person that they hired, they didn't even say that she has done X, Y, and Z in terms of podcasting. I have no clue unless I look her up if she's even any good at what they hired her for. She might be fantastic on it, but did she work on Joe Rogan's podcast? Did she work on another famous podcast? That's a question there. Joining the Archewell Foundation, the couple's philanthropic arm, is Sean Knepp. Having served as Vice President of Philanthropy at SB Projects since 2018, she joins as co-executive director and will work alongside executive director James Holt. Knepp has also held positions at the Goldhurst Foundation and Fundamental Inc. I've never heard of any of those companies. I have not heard of them in the slightest. And that I find really interesting, and that she'll be co-chair with him. Generally, those things don't work out too well. You don't really want two people occupying the same position, because that inevitably leads to conflict. So I'd imagine Holt may be on his way out. And this is their subtle way of telling it. Again, this is just my supposition, but why do you need two people to fill the same role? That makes no sense. That's a waste. That's a redundancy of resources. Unless they're hoping this person, whoever she is, maybe has some connections that they desperately need. And again, some of my stuff I would say probably leans more in the conservative realm. So these may be very progressive foundations I've just never heard of. That could be totally true, but I've never heard of any of those. So I don't know what they do. Let's just look at the Goldhurst Foundation. Vision initiatives about... For the idealists, for the pragmatists, for those who look at the world and say, that's not good enough, and for those with courage and ability to transplant perspective. What the heck is this? Okay, this looks like a bunch of gobbledygook to me. At least the Goldhurst Foundation. That just seems to me, we connect the dots between best emerging innovations and the financial, social, and human capital to make them thrive. We find smart people doing creative things, and we give them the tools to do those things better. That just sounds like gobbledygook. What do you actually do? I think that's a huge thing. What is the SB Projects? Is a diversified entertainment and media company with ventures integrating music, film, television, technology, and philanthropy. Oh, this is a Scooter Braun. Okay. He's the one who I believe has Taylor Swift's library, and that was all the hubbubaloo about that. Again, so there are further cementing their ties to the entertainment industry, which is what Meghan's always wanted. Meghan has always wanted to be famous within the entertainment industry. And so she is trying to cultivate people who will help her get there, because again, she has no talent to make it on her own. If she had the talent, she would have never needed Harry. She would never even have tried to get to Harry, because she would have been too big. She didn't need him. But she still desperately needs him and his title and connections, because otherwise none of these people would give her the time of day. Archewell Productions, the filmed content arm, as if we don't know that already, made a big splash this year with Netflix original Harry and Meghan, a candid look at the Duke and Duchess's move to America and resignation as full-time royals. The series represents the most streamed documentary premiere in Netflix history, with 81.5 million minutes watched in its first week. It was overseen by internal content head Ben Browning, the Oscar-nominated producer of Promising Young Woman. Browning will part ways with Archewell later this year at the expiration of his current deal. The unit will put its focus on scripted content as Chanel Pisk continues to oversee unscripted. Well, that's fascinating, isn't it? So you have a great hit and the first thing you do is let go of the person who's over that arm? That doesn't sound like a company in good shape. That doesn't. And again, you have to look at this as, yes, people watched it, but again, it's a car crash mentality of watching it. They watched it to watch the horror, to watch the trauma, to watch the chaos and everything. They didn't watch it necessarily because they were all that invested in Harry and Meghan and that they were all that supportive of Harry and Meghan. They just wanted to get the dirt, the dish. And so Harry and Meghan are stuck up a creek without a paddle because now you have to actually produce real content. And that's going to be hard because they suck at it. They really suck at it. So they're going to have to figure out how to do this. And this is going to be complicated. And again, they have a ton of competition from a lot of people who are a lot more talented than they are, who are 1,000 times more talented than they are. And they're going to actually have to come up with scripted content. So they want more scripted content. Well, Pearl failed. Meghan, I think, sounded like me if I said, well, I just love romantic comedies. What happened to them? I should do like that. Wouldn't that be great if people did it? That's what she did in the Variety interview. And I'm like, so do you have an idea for a rom-com, or are you just babbling? To me, Meghan is always somebody who babbles and just doesn't do anything. She just talks and talks and talks. And she sounds very, strong and direct when she's talking about it. At the same time, I'm like, you have no clue what you're talking about, do you? And again, it's this thing where, okay, so you want to do scripted, you'll still have unscripted too. Do you have anything in the wings? No. They have the Invictus Games documentary, which we'll get to at the end, but that should have been in the can months ago. They filmed that thing in April. That thing should have been well in the can for a long time. So what's the next steps here? If I'm a business investor, none of that tells me that you're in a good place right now. You don't have a confirmation of your second season. We all know Spotify just let go of people. You're letting go. The person who oversaw your documentary or reality TV series is leaving after doing one thing. Why wouldn't they stay on longer if it was a success? Don't you think they would have stayed on longer if it was a success? To me, that's a sign of a competent company. This doesn't seem like competence to me. This seems like panic. This seems like panic against a time when things did not go the way Harry and Meghan wanted. Following a first wave of audio and content releases, Archewell will streamline its marketing arm. It is currently led by Farrah Taylor, who will also transition out of her role later this year. Taylor led marketing campaigns for Archetypes and Harry and Meghan, as well as the global rollout of Prince Harry's memoir, Spare. Neither she nor Browning will be replaced, as the titles have been dissolved. Oh, none of that sounds good. Again, that is awful. You're a head of marketing, you're letting go of head of marketing, and you have no replacement for them. So who's doing the marketing for you? Who's doing the marketing for you? Unless Netflix and the rest of everybody's like, okay, whenever you market something, we control it now. Spotify, Netflix, the publisher's like, okay, we let you guys do your own thing, but now we control it. And granted, again, the publisher's like, hey, we got our monies back. But I don't think, and I think Netflix to a certain extent is like, yeah, it did pretty well. I don't think Spotify's happy. I don't think Spotify is happy at all. And again, you're letting go of critical people here. And I'm wondering too, if she was let go, I mean, they're parting ways, quote unquote, but if she was let go in part, again, this is just my supposition, is that that Harry was mocked, that everything about his book became about his penis. It became about the number of people he killed in Afghanistan. It became about him being just basically a wimp. And who can Harry and Meghan blame for that? Harry. Harry is the guy. He wrote the stupid things he should not have written. People, of course, glommed onto that because, again, Harry and Meghan have no respect of the public. They don't have a ton of respect of the public. So what do? You don't gloss over those things. You magnify them because that confirms the bias that we already have, which is that Harry and Meghan are a joke and they're untalented hacks. That's what those things confirmed, is that Harry doesn't really have anything to say. All he does is complain. His family calls him paranoid and delusional, and we all see that. It's glaringly clear. So Harry and Meghan, again, this is just disaster for them. And they're clearing house because they're looking really bad right now. And so they're in, again, full-on panic mode and trying to figure out what the heck to do to salvage their train wreck of an operation. Quote, Ben and Farrah have been integral to the creation and execution of many critically and commercially accepted projects during their tenure. They have expertly delivered content and campaigns that have exceeded expectations and made their mark within the cultural zeitgeist, quote, unquote, said Archewell, head of communications and global press secretary to Harry and Meghan. Ashley Hansen. Don't you feel sorry for her? That must be an awful job. Quote, they have played a critical role in helping to tell the stories of the Duke and Duchess thus far, and the couple remain hugely grateful for their support on those look-back projects as they now look forward, she added. It goes on to say, Hansen's team has also seen expansion. Miranda Barbot has been named Director of Global Communications and Press Secretary. Maren Thomas has been named Manager of Communications and will work alongside Disha Tang. Prince Harry recently completed the promotional cycle for Spare, which was named the fastest best-selling global nonfiction book of all time after moving 3.2 million copies in its first week. Moving, not selling, moving. So that means stores ordered books. They went to the stores. They had to order more than they wanted to because that was what the publisher demanded, so they could say they moved X number of books. Be curious to see how quickly it goes on the clearance rack. An impact report on the charitable giving of the Archewell Foundation is expected in the coming days. The couple's next Netflix unscripted original series about the Invictus Games will release in 2023. So this is what they have for the future. One single thing. That's all they have. That's all they have is the Invictus Games documentary. So if I'm a business investor and I am going to invest potentially millions of dollars in the brand of Harry and Meghan, does any of that, what they said, sound like a plan for the future? No, they have nothing. They literally have nothing. That's what that tells us. Now, again, there's probably internal things I don't know about. Maybe they have a ton of things on deck. But if I'm, again, somebody who's looking at their production company going, okay, so you have one thing that probably should have been done months ago because it was originally filmed in April. We all saw you guys filming it. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And it tells me either they haven't confirmed that with Netflix, there's production hell attached to it. It tells me that they don't have a great plan going in right now. And that they're just doing damage control because they didn't realize how terribly the reaction to Harry's book would be. And that people would be like, oh, ouch. And talk about his penis incessantly. But again, Harry's the one who brought it up, so it's on Harry. So do Harry and Meghan have a future in Hollywood? Maybe. But this is crunch time. This is when they can make or break themselves. Because yes, you looked backwards and you did these backward-facing projects, but can you pivot? Can you pivot to better projects? Can you pivot to scripted series? Can you pivot to unscripted documentaries that have nothing to do with you? Where you're not in it at all, that you're just behind there as the producer. That's the only role that you have. And can you sell those things? And can you actually not only create original content, but identify good content to come in on as producers? Again, I go back to the Cecil Hotel documentary on Netflix, which I think is excellent. It's an excellent documentary. It's like 4 episodes. I feel like it carefully navigates through the complexities and the chaos and just the intrigue surrounding this death at the Cecil Hotel. And I think it does a really good job showing different aspects and then showing the conclusion, which is much more mundane than you would think. But it does a fantastic job. It's got great interviews, great atmosphere. And who was the executive producer? Well, it was Ron Howard, who was on the Andy Griffith Show. He was in American Graffiti. He has been in a ton of things. And Brian Grazer, who is also a huge executive producer in Hollywood. He has done a ton of things. I can't think of anything on the top of my head. I feel like I'm wrong if I say what I'm thinking. So I'm not going to say. I was like thinking Pirates, but I'm not sure because that was Gore Verbinski, and I'm just not sure if Brian Grazer was on that or not. So you'll have to excuse me, but Brian Grazer, I've heard his name many times. I like watching Hollywood, so I'm pretty familiar with some of the territory and some of the names. Did they either of them appear in that one single time? No. Did I see their faces? No. Did I have any idea they had any attachment to the project until I saw their name at the end of the credits? No. No clue they were involved at all. That's what Harry and Meghan need to be. Because most likely that documentary started with somebody else. And as producers, Brian Grazer and Ron Howard came in mostly to finance it. So they identified great talent and they cultivated it. I don't know if Harry and Meghan can do that because they have shown multiple times they have control issues. That Meghan wants to control everything. That Meghan doesn't understand that there needs to be subtlety in certain things. So it'll be just utterly fascinating to see if they can actually pull this off or not, or if this will be the year that Archewell completely disintegrates and that Harry and Meghan are just scrambling trying to figure out what to do. Because again, they did not think through any of this. They thought they could still have their half in, half out thing and that Hollywood would just bow on their knees. And yes, Hollywood was curious, and I think they were interested in what Harry and Meghan could do. But Harry and Meghan have been at this, guys, for, like they said, 3 years now. And what do they have to show for it? Not that much, really. And honestly, when you think about it as well, their best performing thing really had nothing to do with Archewell. It was Harry's book. And their documentary, yes, it did well, but it'll be beaten by something else, I have no doubt. And it was, again, the car crash thing where everybody just wanted to see the story behind the story. Can Harry and Meghan go forward? And if they are going forward, will going forward be a reality TV show, all of the Kardashians? Because I think that's the only thing they can do. I think that's the easiest thing they can do. But again, they have to give up that control. I don't think Meghan can do it because she has huge control issues. And I'll be totally honest, I have a bit of them too, because I like to make sure things on this channel are up to par. And I'm so bummed that they're not a lot of times because I'm on a deadline constantly. I'm working around my job and just so many different things and trying to have a smidge of a life from time to time. So I think Harry and Meghan, they can survive, but I think also Hollywood may just eat them alive, just like it did Meghan. So yes, she really hasn't moved beyond Suits. She's still a bit player, desperate for fame and fortune, only to have Hollywood reject her yet again. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again really, really soon. Bye.